Alright, so before we get into the video, I want to give a quick disclaimer. While I was recording this video, your boy got sick, so if my voice sounds different at any point in the video, that's probably why. But I did try to re-record certain parts. Also, I just want to very quickly say thanks for all the support this channel's been getting. We're already at over 4,000 subscribers right now, which is like over 1,000 more than the amount I had last video. So I just wanted to say thanks. Anyways though, with all that out the way, let's hop into the video. So recently, I looked back on one of my personal favorite anime, and if you couldn't tell by the title, I'm talking about Black Lagoon. And yeah, this show, it's a classic. Now, when it comes to defining a classic, people have different opinions on it. For me personally, I see a classic as a series that's not only just iconic and impactful, but also one that I can go back and rewatch it and it still holds up to this day. And Black Lagoon definitely falls under that category for me. This show came out back in 2006, and it was pretty different compared to a lot of the other anime that were out around this time. A lot of it was like action-heavy shonen. This was when the big three were just dominating. There were also a lot of good romance anime to come out around this point, but then out of nowhere you had a series about pirate mercenaries, an evil Terminator maid, and nuns who will sling that iron in the name of the Lord. Never thought I'd have to say that sentence. But as time has gone past, the series has really been climbing up my personal favorites list. The story pretty much follows the main character Rock, who's on a business trip, but the ship that he's on gets hijacked by these pirates called the Lagoon Company. These guys kidnap him pretty much, but instead of running away, he pretty much becomes a part of their crew. Not that he really had any other choice, since the company he's working for made hardly any effort to try and save him. Now, the Lagoon Company pretty much do crime for hire, and the main city that the series takes place in, Roanapur, is pretty much the anime equivalent of a GTA server. So pretty much there's always something for these guys to do. And this immediately had me invested into the show. But what hooked me into the show even more was the cast of characters. Aside from Rock, you have three main members of the Lagoon Company. You have Dutch, who's the leader of the group, and he does a lot of the negotiations for the company. Then you have Benny, who's the mechanic and computer specialist for the group. In a nutshell, he's the company's nerd. Now both Dutch and Benny, they're pretty chill guys. But this can definitely not be said about the next person in the group. The third member, and undoubtedly the most popular character from the show, is Revy. If you're an anime fan and haven't watched Black Lagoon yet, you've probably seen Revy before. That's just because of how popular she is. And it's for good reason too, not only because she's hot as hell, but because she's a certified badass, alright? She's on literal demon timing throughout the entire series. Make one wrong move around her and you're cooked. It's game over. Shawty was out here clearing ships on her own within the first few episodes of the show, just on some different shit. But this S-tier badassery has made her one of my personal favorite characters, and she's really just the most entertaining character to watch on screen. But the characters don't just end there. Outside of the main crew, you have a bunch of other cast members that are just as great. You got Balalaika, who's pretty much the leader of the Russian mafia in Roanapur. You got Etta, who's a gunslinging nun. And then you have Roberta, who's pretty much a killer maid. She's one of the main antagonists in the series, and has not one but two arcs focusing on her. But I'll get to those later. Anyways though, now that I've gone over the characters, it's time to go over the story. The Black Lagoon anime is only 2 seasons long with an OVA series. All of this counted up to 29 episodes. And even though this isn't that many episodes, it still manages to have a whole bunch of different arcs, meaning that the pacing of the series is pretty fast. A lot of this though is because of the action, and let me tell y'all something, the action in the series is heat. She's so cool, bro. Anyways though, when I had started the series, I thought it was going to be basic gunfights. Not that I'd really have a problem with that, but the show had completely proven me wrong. This show has a huge variety when it comes down to the weapons that the characters use, because not only do they use guns, but you've got characters that use swords, knives, RPGs, chainsaws, goddamn flamethrowers, and this isn't even all of them. In all honesty though, I think that this variety really keeps things in the show interesting, and it really prevents a lot of the action scenes from getting stale. This, along with all the savagery that goes into these fights, makes it all the more entertaining.
Careful, boss man.
One really important thing to mention about Black Lagoon is that this show is funny as hell, and I'm specifically talking about the dub, which if you haven't seen Black Lagoon yet, I highly encourage you to watch the dub. Even if you're one of those people who refuse to watch dubbed anime, the dub is like the only right way to watch this show. The voice acting is actually really good, and you can just tell the voice actors were having fun recording this. And this is one of the only anime series that actually make me laugh consistently. Like bruh, the dialogue between the characters is just so good. Now I will say this is a pretty old dub, and there are some things that may not fly by today's standards.
Partner has the fucking documents. Do you follow? Understand you? Yes? You got that, Chinglish?
Dog, like one of my favorite scenes from the show is from season 2. This was like around the middle of the season. This girl named Jane shows up to the church that Revy and Etta are at, and she's like trying to get away from these mafia dudes or whatever. So they let her in, but the guys actually show up at the church. But Revy and Etta ain't trying to hear none of that. So they immediately get to shooting, right? And they're going crazy. This is like them against like 4 or 5 other guys. And they're genuinely scared of these two. But then out of nowhere, another member of the church pops up, and bro whips out a machine gun and joins the shootout. But even that's not it. The head nun of the church shows up, and I didn't really think her old ass was about that action. But once she pulled out that golden deagle, I knew it was over from that point. She literally shot that shit once, and it blew up a whole car. I ain't gonna lie, after this, I'd be scared to go to another church. And after this, the guys leave, understandably so, and everything's back to normal. Now, when I had first seen this scene, bruh, I was laughing my ass off. This literally went on for like almost 2 minutes. And to this day, this is still one of the most memorable scenes from the show for me. Anyways, though, putting all the comedic stuff to the side, the story and the arcs of the show are actually really well written. And I could really go over each individual arc from the show, but I'm just gonna go over my 2 favorites, being the Tokyo arc and the Roberta's Blood Trail arc. Starting off with the first one, it's about Rock and Revy going to Japan and getting themselves involved with the conflict between 2 Yakuza clans. In this arc, we meet Yukio, who's the daughter of one of the Yakuza bosses. Now, while she is the daughter of a Yakuza boss, she lives a pretty normal life, but with the death of her father, she's met with the choice to either continue living a normal life or become his heir and be the next Yakuza boss. If she chooses the first option, it'll put the Yakuza clan in danger, but if she chooses the second option, she'll fall deeper into darkness. And the direction that the anime takes her character in is really interesting to me. I'll try not to spoil it for those who haven't seen the series yet. Aside from Yukio though, this arc has a lot of other things going for it. We're introduced to Genji, who's honestly a really badass character. I mean, bro is literally a modern samurai. We get a lot of good moments between Rock and Revy, and it really makes me appreciate their dynamic even more. And of course, the action in this arc is some of the best we've seen in the series. And overall, this arc was a big highlight of the show for me. Now up next, we have the Roberta's Blood Trail arc, which is the second Roberta arc in the series. Now the first Roberta arc itself was pretty good, probably my favorite one from the first season, and I thought Roberta was really cool. The Blood Trail arc pretty much takes everything that I really liked about the first one and makes it even better. One word to describe this arc as is intense. Black Lagoon is a pretty intense show already, but for this arc it's probably at its best, and it makes for some really great suspenseful scenes. But what really drives this arc home for me is Roberta's character. I already mentioned that I really liked her from her first arc, but this arc does so much for her character because she went from being a cool badass character with some pretty good writing to a really well written and in-depth antagonist. And the conclusion for her character is really emotional but also pretty dark. And that's one thing about this series. Behind all the action and comedic scenes, the show is pretty dark and it goes into some pretty heavy themes. The show doesn't try to hide this and it's pretty well established within the first few episodes. And you can definitely see how well represented these themes are when you take a deeper dive into the characters. Take the main character, Rock, for example. I already mentioned it when I was talking about the plot, but he starts off as your casual businessman who just unintentionally got involved with some pirates. But once he joins the crew and gets deeper and deeper into the life of crime that they pursue, it really takes a toll and starts to change him. And with each passing arc, he falls deeper and deeper into the darkness. At first, the show is pretty subtle about it, but by the time we get to the end of the Tokyo arc, the viewer is fully aware of it. And from here, he continues to fall deeper and deeper. In all honesty, I think Rock is a really underrated character, not just in Black Lagoon, but in anime in general. He has some really good writing that I think a lot of people just overlook. Anyways though, this is one of the main things within Black Lagoon. Most of the characters aren't just born or willingly choose to become evil, but rather certain circumstances or events that take place in their life that leads them to that path. And we find this out about a lot of the characters through their backstories. Even someone as cold-hearted and badass as Revy is an example of this. Throughout Revy's childhood, she didn't really have much. She lived in a bad area and we don't know who or where her parents are. On top of this, she was getting abused in ways that I'm not gonna get into, but this really caused her to have a bleak perception of the world even into her adulthood. The anime only shows her backstory for about 40 seconds, but it was really effective and did so much for her character. One of the more darker cases of this theme being portrayed is with the vampire twins. This, in my opinion, is one of the more underrated arcs from the series. It focuses on 2 twins who go by Hansel and Gretel. The 2 are from Romania, and at the time there was a ban on abortion to increase birth rates. Once the dictator of Romania died, a lot of children became orphans, including the twins, and this caused them to be taken in by the Italian mafia. And the 2 went through some pretty terrible stuff. They were constantly abused, people would use them for their own twisted desires, and they were even forced to kill other children. And all of this caused them to become cold-hearted serial killers who thought that the more people they killed, the longer they get to live. Now in the anime, the 2 are tasked with killing Balalaika. Even though the 2 are children, they go on quite the killing spree and ran up her. Balalaika and the Russian mafia pretty much handled them like they would with any other opponent. Since the twins were so far gone, the only real way to save them was to kill them.
It's beautiful. The sky.
Looking back at everything I mentioned about Black Lagoon, this show is really something special. It just overall executes everything well, whether that be the action, the characters, or the themes. And I could continue to bring things up about the show, but y'all pretty much get the point. Black Lagoon is sort of similar to Monster and Nana, which are also two other anime animated by Madhouse, where it just feels so real that it doesn't even feel like you're watching an anime. And these are the reasons why I think Black Lagoon is truly a classic. With all that being said though, I'm gonna end the video here. Had a lot of fun making this video, even though I was like sick for most of it. But if you've made it this far, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll catch y'all in the next video.